Hello, and welcome to the Darby Creek Diaries. I'm Gail Thompson, and I'm so glad you're here today. I hope it's a good day. Before Christmas, Tim Holtz had several Facebook Lives that were very informative, and I learned so much about ink smooshing, I wanted to share it with you. First, Distress White Heavystock is new, and it does give the brightest white and the brightest color saturation of anything that I've had. And so I got some of that and I cut it up into quarters, and we're going to smoosh some ink, which is a lot of fun. I'm just taking various greens because I'm going to do the greenery first and just smooshing them there on my mat. I'll have them listed below for you. And I learned some tips about this too that I'm going to show you. There are a couple things to it that you got to do to make it work out right. The first one is you're going to mist it with a little water, but then you're going to run your finger through it to kind of get it going and mix it up and blotch it up. And then it's just like you usually do. You plunk down into the color, and you don't get real concerned about anything right now because we're going to be layering and layering, and you may not even see part of what you're doing there. The next thing to do is you want to dry between layers. And he said instead of using an embossing heat gun, to just use a regular heat tool. So that's what I'm doing here. It's just the old-fashioned heat tool that's a lot slower, and it has a wider front on it than the embossing tool. And then we're going to just plunk back in for another layer. At the end of this, my fingers get pretty inky, but I don't mind. But if you want, you could wear gloves. And now layer 2, I'm going to run the heat over it. And I kind of was running low on the ink, so I just put me down some more. This really is, it's fun because it takes zero talent, which is right up my alley. There we go again. Time to give it a heat. This paper is designed to be able to take a lot of wet and a lot of heat. And I love how it's looking, but you know what? I can never stop, so I will keep going. Even though at this point, she's pretty much done. Well, at least with the distress inks. You want to add the droplets. That gives it just a little more character. I'm just flicking some water on there. I didn't want to spray big bunches, and I'm having trouble controlling my little water gun, so I just sprinkled it. And pretty soon those will pop up. It won't make a huge difference on this background, but it will do just a smidge. If you let it sit there for a little bit, you'll tell just a little bit of a difference. Now I'm going to do it again with blue. I'm starting out with speckled egg mixed with broken china, I think. They'll be listed below. And I'm going to make the background for the card. It's exactly what I did before, so I'm not going to spend a bunch of time doing this for you, because the video is a little longer than I normally do anyway. But I wanted you to see, because I'm starting off with a really, really light shade. So I did want to show you a smidge about how I started building up the color. So through the magic of television, I'm kind of cutting through to the chase, and I'm just adding some darker and darker colors as we go. But I didn't just want it to all of a sudden be poof. There it is, done. So now I'm going to add the darkest of the dark. I will have that listed below. Off the top of my head, I can't remember if that's Faded Jeans or what, but it'll be down below. And I'm going to give it a good drying. And there is our background for now. But I'm not happy just with that. So I got out my Copic white ink, which happens to be water-based. It is not an ink or an alcohol-based ink. And I'm going to splatter up some white because this was going to be kind of a wintry card, but I didn't want to, do too much to take away from this background that I just worked so hard on. I added a little more water to it to get her going. And pretty soon, I mean, my thumb is absolutely white, but there you go. It just gives little tiny sprays. I didn't want big, big blotches. And I wanted to do it to both the blue and the green pieces here. Tim suggests you just sit down one day and just do a whole bunch of these backgrounds, and then they'll all be ready and you only have the mess once. And I think that's a great idea, and that's a good way when you don't feel creative enough to do a whole card. And you might get some ideas while you're doing it. Now, these are the mini holiday greens die set. I wanted to show you that I cut up one of my mats from my Gemini because I accidentally had my dies flipped and it cut through. I've done that more than once. So instead of throwing it away, I just use it as backgrounds to put my dies on before I put them in their folders. Always, I am more thrifty in the craft room than anywhere else in the house. I don't think twice about throwing away food that, leftovers, but boy, I use up the paper to the nth inch. So there are the pieces that die set will cut, but I'm keeping that stuff to the right because even though it's chopped up, you can kind of cut it and people wouldn't know that it wasn't a branch. So I'm leaving all of that goodness, and maybe I'll do something later with it. You never know. See, you could kind of trim that and just stick it as random greenery, I think anyway. Here is the cardinal that I'm using. It was a freebie from Simon Says Stamp, and apparently it's not available anymore because I should have had a second one coming. But there are lots of cardinal dies out there, and I will try to find one and link for you. And I'm cutting the pieces out of 3 different shades of red. It's kind of hard to tell, but the one up on the upper right is darker than the other one. And I got all my pieces ready for you, and then I decided it was just kind of plain, so I'm adding walnut distress ink to everything to give it just a little bit of aging and just a little more dimension. It just is kind of flat. And I'm taking care to kind of brush in from the sides so the edges will be darker. And, a lot of this will be covered up by the die cut that's on top of it. So I shouldn't spend so much time on it, but I, for some reason, did. And I don't know why I have the finger like that. I don't know. I just do weird things. So it's time to glue this all together. And it lines up super duper easy. And of course, liquid glue is the way to go so that you can wiggle it a little bit. And now I'm going to color his feet. I know their feet really aren't black, but yellow over the top of that wasn't going to happen. So I just made them black. Artistic license. This is artistic license anyway, in so many ways. Now I'm going to continue gluing everything. I love the needle tip on this. I'm about out of this glue. That's art glitter glue. I just bought a thing of honeybees glue, and I'm going to give that a whirl. I'll be sure to let you know what I think of it. I'm pretty sure the tip is not going to be quite like this art glitter glue, and I like it for other reasons. Art glitter glue is strong, and I really, really, really like it. Let me know in the comments what your favorite glue is, because maybe I'm missing something. I'm going to put on his little beak, which is really tiny, and of course I lose those all the time. And there is our cardinal, but he still looks a little blah, so we're going to work on him in a little bit. Off screen, I cut out an ornament background. No, it's not a background. It's a background for this card, but this is actually a Hero Arts ornament. And I cut a little piece of that ornament. I just ran it through the die cutter and just with the glitter paper just up at the top, and I trimmed off and added it to the top to give it a little something something. And then I have to go through the thinking and plotting and planning. I did some Nuvo drops off screen as well because they take a while to dry and they take me a while to put on. And I do tap them to get it so they don't have the little cone shapes. But here I am just kind of laying out my card. I'm sorry part of it's off screen. I was having some camera issues as well. I thought I was under it and then it would just turn off. So I had too much memory used. Now I'm going to run the background through my die cutter. And first I'm going to get the paper a little damp. This is just probably 80-pound Nina Solar White. I don't think I would have used thicker. I'm just going to line it up in there and run it through my die cutting machine on the embossing sandwich. And I'm making now the card base. I always make those fresh daily. If I was smart, I'd sit down and make a bunch of them at once, but I never have been accused of being smart. So I looked at that and I thought, well, that's really pretty, but it needs something. And I decided that it was a little too big. And I'd already cut the corners, and then I looked at it and I said, no, it's just too big. And then I put my bird there, which is not realistic, the bird hanging out of the ornament, but shh, don't tell anybody, more artistic license. And I'm arranging things, and later on I decide that I want to put berries on that lower branch. So I do. And there I've kind of got my idea, but I'm looking at that and I love the texture. It's one of those 3D embossing folders. And this time I grabbed the other corner rounder just by accident, so we just go with it. I like that original one a little better, but this works. And it's just so white. And I looked at that and I thought, oh, it's just still a little white. So I got out my speckled egg in Distress ink, which I love. I love all the new colors they've come out with in the last few months. I'm lightly running it around the edge just to give it a little bit of a differentiation between that and the card base. And I start light and then I get a little heavy-handed because I don't have just a ton of patience. And I think my arm just gets heavier and heavier, and usually I wind up splopping somewhere. But I think that just looks a lot better. Now it's time to just put everything together. And to me, that's the best part. Getting to see the final product. I always eyeball everything. Hopefully it's in the center. Anybody that knows me knows I hate measurements. I do it all day at work and I just can't do it on my off time. I decided Mr. Cardinal was just, he needed some spiffing up. So he is getting some clear glitter on there. Now that temporarily does darken the background on this, but it does lighten up a little bit because that background is paper and it's not really ink. And then I decide I'm going to do it to the little branches of things. So I do a little bit of that. And then I start placing them on the card. And like I'd mentioned earlier, I went ahead and put the red Nuvo drops on those berries beneath the bird. I just wasn't quite sure how everything was going to land. So I didn't do it. Now I do want him to be standing on a branch. I don't want to go that far artistically. I do like his little sparkle. And then I'm just going to tuck the other leaves underneath. Just giving it a little bit of swag. Didn't want everything all lined up. So I do mess with this a while until I did kind of bury one foot. I didn't want him to be standing on the outside of it, so I tucked a foot in. So we're almost done. but not quite, because I was in the mood to add a little bit of sparkle on top of the sparkle. So I'm getting out my glue, and we're going to get snow. Now, snow is absolutely beautiful on a card, and I have a tutorial on all about how to add snow to a card, and I will link that below. But one way is to do the diamond dust here, and it's hard to see because it's clear, but there you go. Camera picked it up a little bit, and I thought it just added beauty. I'm not a fan of snow outside, but I do love it on the cards. But I do want you to check out that other video. A lot of people have found it helpful. Then off screen, I just heat embossed my sentiment on a little piece of black cardstock. And I'm going to tuck it in underneath the branches. And that is my card. Somehow I forgot to tell you about the bow on top. I die cut a bow out of holographic paper to go around the top, and I'm just showing all the shimmer. This was so much fun to make. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll give it a try. I'd love to see what you make. And if you enjoyed this, I sure hope you'll share it with a friend. Subscribe, I really appreciate that. And like and comment. And follow me on my other platforms, Instagram, Facebook, my blog, Pinterest. I hope that you have a fabulous week and have a chance to craft something. And I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.